Good morning, Wisconsin exporters. This webinar is for you, dedicated to you, all about Mexico, offline and online tools for helping Wisconsin exporters, talking about business opportunities for exporters to Mexico. We're really pleased that you're all here today. It's fantastic. We're going to be talking about a lot of different subjects, from Mexico to online tools to an upcoming trade venture. So there's a lot of information packed in. My name is Susanna Hardy. I'm going to introduce myself in a second with the rest of the team. Before we get going, though, I'm just while the last people are logging on, I'm going to do some quick little housekeeping. So first, in terms of housekeeping, IBT Online, our company, has been doing a lot of webinars. Now we've been doing them for 4 years. So there's a lot of webinars about Mexico, about Latin America, about online, about international exporting, all kinds of things. This is one of the webinars that we're doing here. This one is about 45 minutes long. There will be some polls during the webinar, so we would really appreciate your help there in terms of going on and clicking the right answers that you like. We're going to have a handout during the webinar as well. We're going to give you a handout about Mexico Online, an infographic, which is a really useful little sort of, summary tool of everything you need to know about Mexico Online. And we're going to have a live Q&A at the end of the webinar. So please submit questions in that little question box, the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, the little chat box. Just submit them, and we'll be getting on to questions at the end. This webinar is also recorded. As I said, there's a lot of information in it, but you're lucky it's recorded, and we will send you a recording on Thursday or Friday of this week. So just in time for your Christmas stocking. And finally, there's a survey at the very end, and this is about 5 questions long. It's really short little survey. We would really appreciate it if you could just, stay on for a couple of seconds afterwards, fill out the survey. So without further ado, let's start this webinar. First of all, let's meet the team. So we're really pleased today. Well, I'll introduce myself first. I'm on the right-hand side. My name is Susanna, and I'm Chief Content Officer for IBT Online. And really pleased to be here with you, although I'm not actually in Wisconsin today, but very happy to be assisting and helping to moderate this webinar today. To my left is Samantha Sofici, also from IBT Online, and Samantha is the International Online Business Development Manager for Wisconsin. You have her contact details there, and she's there. She's going to be participating and talking about the Online Global Program for Wisconsin companies and what can you do there. Next to her there, going on the left, is Mark. I'm sure you all know him already, Mark Rodereich, International Business Director for the WEDC. Mark has been active for and promoting and helping Wisconsin exports for some time now, for many years, and has really been a star performer and an absolute solid rock assistant for anyone who's been involved in exporting and indeed in foreign direct investment for the state of Wisconsin. And he has a special remit to look after the Mexican market. So Mark will also be heading up the trade venture that's going to be in February for the state. And then just on the left here, we have Efren Flores, who is the authorized trade representative for the Wisconsin state. He's part of the Global Business Partners, and he's based in Mexico. And I'm sure all of you who have already been active in Mexico will also know Efren and his amazing ability to pull out individual meetings and find the right in-market partners and the right market research that is so essential for all your exports. So Efren is an invaluable tool for all Wisconsin exporters looking to go to the Mexican market. Just a very quick word then on IBT Online, since, who are we in a sense? We are a private company. It's a private company. We're based in the US, a US company, although we have also an office in Europe. And we are basically 100% focused on small mid-cap companies, helping them to export and go internationally using online tools. In other words, we build and manage websites for companies. And so one of the things we're going to talk about today is Wisconsin companies and other Midwestern companies that have used our services and what they're doing in Mexico with websites. Here we go. Let's see if we're, okay, that's for IBT Online. Today's agenda then, here, we're going to be talking about Mexico's online business opportunities, followed by why do exporters need websites, then Mexico Online, and finally a helping hand for Wisconsin exporters, and a little detail about the Mexico trade venture. Okay, so first of all, Mexico business opportunities. And I'd really like just to ask Efren if he's free, if he could talk us through those. Efren?
Yes, how you doing, everyone? This is Efren Flores. Thank you, Susana, for the nice introduction. And first of all, I want to talk to you about Mexico. I'm sure that some of you are already familiar with the country. But I want to talk about, the basics of how to do business in Mexico. As Susana mentioned, we're all going to be open for answers or questions at the end of the presentation. And well, first of all, I want to talk about the relationship of Mexico and Wisconsin. And Mexico is a secondary trading partner for Wisconsin. And the forecast, well, that was back in 2018, it's almost $3 billion in trade. And as you see on the chart, export from Wisconsin to Mexico is 85% more than China. So we have a pretty strong trade relationship. It has been going through the years, and we see more and more companies from Wisconsin interested in the Mexican market. And also a lot of companies that have been successful. So you should consider Mexico as an option. First of all, because we're pretty close. It's a natural market for any U.S. state, and I can say that probably more than 26 states in the U.S. are fully dependent of exports to Mexico. So and Wisconsin is not an exception. So I strongly suggest you to take into consideration Mexico as a potential market. And later on we want to talk about the trade ventures, the trade venture that we're going to have in February. Mark will tell you more about it. But based on the experience, companies that eventually visit Mexico as a business trip, they will be more successful than others. And just imagine if your competition is already thinking about in the Mexican market, well, you need to catch up and be more aggressive. So let's start with the basics of Mexico. Mexico is an emerging market. Right now it's the 15th largest economy in the world, the second largest in America, and inflation is less than 5%. We have 11 free trade agreements with 46 countries. Of course, we have NAFTA is still in place until it's approved by the Congress of the 3 countries involved. But that's going to be the USMCA agreement in the future. Hopefully, it's going to be open for next year. I think everything is solved at this moment. The 3 parties got basically what they wanted, and there was a nice negotiation. So. But this time, NAFTA is still in place. There are some duties of steel, some retail products, and so on. But just going back to the benefit of Mexico having 11 free trade agreements, it's that it's open. It's an open market, and they're getting a lot of companies from overseas in thinking and selling products into Mexico, but also, companies are establishing facilities in Mexico to get advantage of those free trade agreements. So, for example, Mexico has a free trade agreement, of course, the U.S., Canada, Europe, Israel, Central South America, Japan, and so on. So those companies are getting an advantage. So, like I said, I strongly suggest to think in Mexico, get a benefit of right now the NAFTA or USMCA agreement for next year, but you have a lot of advantages. Mexicans love to get U.S. products. They think about the quality. They think is the relationship that both countries have, and so on. So, in the case of Mexico, you will see is the leading exporter of high technologies manufacturing in Latin America. There is a strong aerospace technology or aerospace sector in the country. Uh, uh, Automotive, I will say, is the very strong sector. Appliances, agribusiness, plastics, IT, and it has a well-known, modern, and well-classified infrastructure. If we see, if we see the Moody's upgrade, it's a 3A grade, which is it's a nice grade for Mexico. Now, as you know, we have a new government. They started December 1st, a new president that's doing a lot of changes. And a good news for this that based on the experiences on the new, of presidential elections and also presidential changes, we don't see any economic problems. The economy is still stable. It's a forecast to grow around 2.6 to up to 3% a year. So and then for next year. So that and there's a lot of changes. Now the idea of the new government is to have a lot of savings. So that means that government procurement will be kind of tight, but at the same time, that money is going to be used for different purposes, okay? Especially for the medical devices. So there is the new budget coming up, and they're thinking to grow that budget to stimulate the new purchase of equipment for medical, to have a better infrastructure. The new government is thinking about the refineries, airports, ports, highways, and so on. So infrastructure is going to be a nice sector to think about for the Wisconsin companies. Then the forecast for 2050, Mexico will become the eighth largest economy in the world and the 11th most populous. And a good percentage of that population is going to be middle class. Middle class has been in the constant growth in this country. Now, as more people with purchasing power and thinking about new possibilities, new products. And now we have a new generation. It's the millennials and centennials that are thinking, okay, I need to try something else. New technology, new tastes, a lot of new flavors, and so on. So that's it. That's where technology, new products come in Mexico. So I just want to talk about, I already mentioned about the relationship between the U.S. and Mexico. Like I said, 26 states depend on Mexico as a first or second destination for exports. And if you have a chance to go into Laredo, Texas, right in the U.S.-Mexican border, you will see a big line of trucks, okay, where 1 billion one per day in trade is done. So, and it's just amazing to see what's the movement of products going back and forth. Now, I want to tell you about the best prospects for Wisconsin exporters. It's electrical machinery, industrial vehicles, except for roadways, plastic sports, optional scientific medical instruments. But it's not the only one. After working for Wisconsin, helping companies from Wisconsin to the Mexican markets, I have seen a lot of things. The classical cheese, and water treatment plants, metal fabrication, and so on. So if you don't see your product in there, that doesn't mean you don't have a market for Mexico. We have helped companies, from the simple retail product up to the high end or high technology equipment. So that's why we want to be here in Mexico to help you, to tell you if you have a potential, what is going to be the expectation, and also to help you to find some clients in Mexico. And then probably the ones you're already working with Mexican companies, or you have some business going on, is the business etiquette. It's totally different what you're expecting in doing business in the US or in other countries. Mexico is pretty unique, okay? So it takes, like I said, you need to be very, very friendly to the people. Mexicans love to have friends before a business partner. So you have to keep that in mind. Mexicans take a long time to decide. They want to go over and over and over. So they take, quite time to say yes, okay? They don't want to say no, they don't want to hurt your feelings. They will tell you something else, but that doesn't mean that they're not interested. Like I said, they tell you more time. So and it also depends on the region of Mexico you're dealing with. So if you're talking to a company in the north part of Mexico, of course, they're going to be more forward and straight to tell you you are open for business or not. But and also, I would strongly suggest you, if you want to enter to the Mexican market, is to have a Mexican presence. Through a distributor, through a rep, a end user, a partner, a joint venture. Why? Because that Mexican local business person know the way of doing business. They will help you to follow up, because it's very, very important to follow up with the Mexicans. They know the culture, they know the language, they know to move around and go around different things in the business. So that's the best way. I have been hearing from other companies, hey, I want to go direct. Yeah, I can help you to get that. But suddenly you will need someone who can knock the door to check that everything's going fine with the companies and so on. And like I said, to have a local presence, representative. Price is also an issue. Mexico is a price-driven country, but it's not. Also, it's not a deciding factor. Why? Because Mexicans really recognize the U.S. quality. So if they have to pay the premium, they will say, yes, I want to that because I want to offer the best to my clients. Spanish, of course, you already know this is the national language. And if you can prepare your brochures, your website in Spanish, that would be great. But now most of the business people are pretty familiar with the English language. But if you want, it depends on product to product and also the sector you want to serve. But that's, like I said, it will help a lot to have your information in Spanish. So, like I said, we're here to help you to open your possibilities in Mexico. Think about the trade venture that we're going to have in February, where we're going to help you to set up with Mexican companies, pre-qualified, really interested in your products, and then to help you with the market overviews and so on. I think Mark will give you some more insights about that. And think about Mexico as a new possibility of increasing your sales internationally. Thanks so much.
Efren, thank you so much. A fantastic overview of Mexico as a export destination for Wisconsin companies. And with that, I would love to launch our first poll, which is simply, are you already doing business in Mexico? And click on the one that suits your case. Are you there already with a local partner? Do you already have an online presence? Are you thinking about it? Do you have your own subsidiary even? And I think the majority of you, over 50%, have now answered yes with a local partner or an in-market partner. Another about 25% are thinking about it, and finally about 30%, 25, 30% have an online presence as well, which is fantastic. So thank you very much. End of poll. And thank you again also, Efren, for a terrific introduction and overview of the very attractive Mexican market. We're going to go on now and talk about why exporters need websites and what you can do with websites as an exporter, and particularly as for Wisconsin exporters. And the first, I guess, the obvious reason why exporters need websites is because the world is online. In 2018, actually, we passed the 4 billion mark. Over 4 billion people are now online, and that means online in a very regular way. Basically, everybody's got a smartphone now, so you have the internet with you all the time. And of those 4 billion, about 3 billion are on social media all the time. So they're communicating a lot all the time as well. So if you think that in your state, if you think, wow, here I have a very online life. I've got my smartphone. My kids all have their smartphones. We've all got computers. The world is just as plugged in. And in fact, the US does not have the highest penetration rate for internet or the highest penetration rate for social media and so on. So, as I'm sure you've always heard from people who are encouraging you to export, I think it's US Commercial Services are always saying, 85% of the GDP of the world is outside the United States. Same for the internet. Most of the internet, 90% of the internet, is outside the USA. Now, what has the internet made different for our businesses? How has it changed the dynamics? And I'm not going to go into that too far, but I think there's this one diagram hopefully sort of sums it up. In the past, it was more sort of a one-on-one relationship, a binomial relationship between your company and the customers. The internet and social media has made it possible for customers to react together and to have a much more complex relationship. It has therefore become customer-centric. So the customer sits at the center of it, and you as an exporter know that your customer out there in, say, Mexico, he's the boss. He's going to say when he wants to buy, how he wants to buy, and from when and from whom he wants to buy. So, and he can search it out at any time. So that's really the key on that. So, that's, I think, the key for much of that. Now, again, your job as an exporter is to make sure that you can somehow interact or intervene in some of those customer to customer centric arrows, and that you can influence them and show your brand and make sure people are aware of you. Right. So there you go. That's sort of the customer centric, and that means, of course, that the web has to be client focused and customer centric. And the best way I can really relate to that is to just go back for a second to say, how are search engines operating? How do they work? Because if you understand how a search engine works, you'll understand much more also about what you need in the Mexican market or your other export markets. And in a way, if I just take the case of Google, one thinks of Google.com, but Google.com is really for the US. It's very different if you're, say, in the UK. I'm sitting in the UK at the moment. My google.co.uk is significantly different from google.com. Not just the languages, not just the words used, but Google in the UK believes, rightly or wrongly, that I have different interests than someone sitting in the United States. If I type in hairdresser, it's going to give me a hairdresser around the block from me. It's not going to give me something in Wisconsin, obviously. Google Mexico has 90% share of the market in for search engines in Mexico. And guess what? It's in Spanish. So think of Google as 192 different search engines. In that case, it becomes really necessary to say, okay, if I want to reach a Spanish audience, is it enough just to put a Spanish page, a Mexican Spanish page on my existing US website? Won't that be enough? No, because Google Mexico does not think that that page is relevant to someone sitting in Mexico. They think that you have to be relevant in Mexico, you have to be client-focused, market-specific. Here's an example of what I looked like sitting in London when I type in red shoes. I get lots of things about Debenhams and House of Fraser, Zalando, which is a German e-commerce site, M&S, eBay, all kinds of things. Sitting in Wisconsin, if I type in google.com, search for red shoes, I get all kinds of other stores that don't exist here. So therefore, Google sees me as, it sees me sitting in London. It says these stores in Wisconsin are not relevant for you. So Google is client-focused, market-specific. The same thing holds true, by the way, for social media. Think of Facebook as Facebook US. It's different from Facebook London, Facebook UK, Facebook Mexico. Facebook's largest markets today are not even in the United States. Facebook has bigger audiences in places like India. Facebook is available in over 100 languages. So again, rather than saying, okay, I'm putting something out on Facebook, on my social media, won't that be enough to attract a Mexican audience? The answer, unfortunately, is not. Another way of looking at this is to look at keywords. And here's an example of keywords that you have to be extremely market-specific and client-focused. I asked one of our staff who does a lot of social media, okay, give me an example. And she said, well, we do a lot for the car industry and the car sector. And, obviously in Spain, coche means 90% of people looking for something about cars would type in coche. In Mexico, under 30% are typing in coche. 73% are typing in auto. And auto is by far the dominant one for the entire Latin America. So again, if you're going to reach out to people in these markets, you need to be market-specific, client-focused in each case. And that's really what boils down to having a localized website. So a localized website is not just about, say, translation. That's one of the items that I've listed here out of 10 criteria to be localized. So localized means, yes, fully adapted to local language, but it also means a registered domain name, hosted locally, optimized for the local search engine. It could have regulatory requirements like in Europe with GDPR. So a lot of these factors come in to being a localized website. As I said before, if you want to reach the Mexican market with your website and want to use tools like a website to reach your export markets, you need localized websites, not just your US.com. And what do they bring you? Well, localized websites bring you the same as your US website. They can bring you brand development. They can bring you control of your online presence, establishing credibility. A lot of our companies use them to find distributors or to manage in-market partners. So it's a terrific way just to get found in these markets, in these export markets. And we argue that website is even more important for an exporter than it is for your domestic market. Your domestic market, most people know you. In your export markets, you have to be found. And what's the best way to get found today? Well, with a website. And what's the best way to be understood? With a localized website, and therefore do business. So there you go. Those are localized websites and why we believe exporters need localized websites. And with that, I am going to launch the second poll. So please, again, if you can get your mouses ready, and have this. Do you already have localized websites for your export markets? do you use localized websites? And I can tell you now that about I'd say, well, interesting, because some of you said you had an online presence. Okay, so there's only about maybe 15% of you that are looking at your export markets with online presence in your export markets, and about 50% only have online presence in your home market. And we would encourage you to look a bit further. Now I'm going to talk about sort of Mexico online, and hopefully Samantha can join me on this. If you're there, Samantha.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'm going to talk about Mexico online. So as a total population, there are about 130 million people, and 85 million of those people are online. And there's about an equal parts, plus or minus a few million, that are also active social media users. And this is a growing trend, and it's not slowing down. It's growing at about 10% per year, and it looks like that trend is going to continue. Moving on to the next slide. So Mexico is huge, and just to put it into perspective, Mexico is about 3 times the size of Texas. But what's interesting is that the majority of the internet users are in 3 cities, in Mexico City, in Guadalajara, and Monterrey. And this is just because of infrastructure. It's just that the infrastructure allows for more internet users to be in those areas, whereas maybe more rural areas just don't have it available. But that is definitely an initiative that the government is pushing forward, trying to improve the infrastructure and get internet to those rural areas. Like I mentioned before, there is double-digit growth in Mexico in terms of internet users and along with social media users, which I will get into a little bit more later. And what's interesting is that a lot of big companies are taking note of it. For example, Amazon. Amazon is said that Mexico is a market which right now is at 12 billion, and the growth has been in the double digits. So they're actually doubling down in Mexico. And the same thing goes for Walmart. Walmart is going to invest about $4 billion. But actually, they already had invested between 2012 and 2016 to improve the logistics and their business in Mexico. So it's a country that a lot of companies are taking note in, and you can just see that it's just going to grow. Going into the next slide. Here you can see some really interesting numbers. So the e-commerce in Mexico is growing, as with the trends that I mentioned before, at 59% from 2014 to 2015 growth between 59% growth between those 2 years. And the same thing goes for B2C e-commerce. It's growing at about 25% per year, and it looks like it's going to keep growing at that rate going into the future. B2B is a little bit harder to tell, but more or less, it's actually the growth trend is actually more impressive. They say that B2B is, we've seen a range between $25 billion to $40 billion. So it's a very impressive market to get into. It is Latin America's largest market in terms of e-commerce. So if that's something that that companies are interested in, then Mexico is the way to go. Next is social media. So Mexico is extremely social. They spend about 8.5 hours a day on the internet, as opposed to the US, where we spend about 6.5 hours on average. Facebook is the dominating social media platform as of right now, but YouTube is very, very close behind it. Between WhatsApp, Facebook messaging, Facebook, people just love to talk to each other. They love to communicate. They trust each other more than they trust companies and the government. So they love to interact on social media. Something that's really interesting about YouTube, which if you guys click on the handout that's provided, there's an infographic all about Mexico's online environment, including a really neat section on social media. YouTube is 90% of internet viewers go on YouTube, and they spend about 37% per visit. 37 minutes per visit. And 56% of people actually go on YouTube every single day. So if you take anything away from this, is to please use YouTube. Go on there, get a company video, put some subtitles, and make it available to users in Mexico because they love to watch videos. Another thing that's really interesting about Mexico is the .mx domain name. Google.mx is the most prominent search engine with over 90% of the market share. So that's another thing to take away, is to please buy your .mx domain names, because as Susanna mentioned, Google knows that you have those domain names, and it'll rank you above other sites. Going on to the next slide. I think I pass it back to Susanna.
Thank you very much. Thanks. That's terrific, Samantha. A little overview of Mexico Online. And as Samantha pointed out, there is an infographic. If you go on the right-hand side of your screen, a little toolbox, you should be able to draw to pull over or drag over something called infographic Mexico Online, and that's there for you to keep and have as a summary of Mexico Online. There's a lot of interesting information, and as Samantha just pointed out as well, the .mx is the domain name for Mexico, and the one that you should own, that you should take away with you and have that and keep that. As I mentioned earlier, people begin their searches with Google.mx, not Google.com. So in Mexico, nearly 90% of searches go through Google.mx rather than Google.com. So now let's talk about a helping hand for Wisconsin exporters. Let's talk about how we can sort of help you both in terms of, and what Wisconsin is proposing, both in terms of online and also for the Mexico venture coming up in February. First, I wanted to give some examples of companies who use localized websites to try and show you a little bit of the type of things that you can do as an exporter with a localized website. And basically the key reason we find again and again why we find that our customers come to us is they say, we want to build a global brand. How do we build a global brand? We want to generate more leads. Therefore we want to be credible in that market. Therefore we want our distributors to find us. We want more distributors. We need to be relevant in that target market. So all of these things are the core drivers, really, for saying, build global brand means these things for companies. And these are all, this is just from sort of canvassing our companies and our clients. Why do they want localized websites for their exports? So that's sort of the key takeaway. Now, drilling down into some examples. This is a Wisconsin company, which some of you might know. And they had always an American presence, a .com, and then decided really that they needed to distinguish and to promote their brand much more, and therefore really said, okay, let's buy into this wholeheartedly. We really want to target the Latin America sort of continent, as it were, and particularly we have a very strong distributor in Mexico. We want to support that distributor. We also want to have a major push into Australia and New Zealand, and then also into Europe, particularly in the UK and France. So they decided to we'll have these websites built for them. So we built the websites for them in these different areas to act as a platform for their distributors. So the distributors in these markets could therefore bounce products off it, try and get social media marketing off it, bring this and say, okay, we're going to have a trade show here, let's promote this a bit more, and so on. And really, it's driving traffic to the distributors. That's the core reason that they wanted to have the websites, the local websites, and with that, to develop an AMSOIL brand, a knowledge of the brand itself, because this is a product that can easily become more commoditized. And they said, no, this is not a commodity. This is a synthetic motor oil, which is significantly different, and we have to prove that to our local audiences. With regards to the Mexican one, my Mexico website was one of the most reactive they'd ever seen. It was really an amazing, it's been an amazing market to work on. We driving the similar strategies in, say, France and Mexico. We'll have a similar sort of strategy, or a similar pictures or competition or whatever it is we're doing for AMSOIL in let's say 2 different markets, Mexico and France. The reaction in Mexico will blow the French numbers out of the water. It is an incredibly gratifying market to get involved in online. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be doing this webinar with you in Wisconsin, because I think if you take away also the fact that Mexico is a fantastic market, take away the other fact, it's a fantastic market to have online. Another Wisconsin company is called Pivot Point. They are like AMSOIL, privately owned. They're smaller. They're very focused on a niche product. The problem they have really is partly that their products are quite innovative. Hard to know their products. So one thing they have to do is a lot of market education, market research, market education. They have to help their distributors, make sure though that they stick out of the haystack, and make sure that people actually find them, because nobody's going to actually search for that word, because this is a product that doesn't really exist except with Pivot Point. So it's unique to Pivot Point, and therefore the search part of it is very hard. So they really have to drive traffic to their distributors, but with a market education strategy. So again, it's about developing a brand, and one of the core ones that they wanted was throughout Europe. So they didn't go for the Mexican market this kind, but throughout Europe. But I thought it'd be interesting for you to see a couple of other examples of Wisconsin companies. This is not a Wisconsin company, but again, a U.S. company who decided to really focus on Mexico. Their biggest potential markets, China, Brazil, Mexico, and Japan. And they have now built these, or asked us to build the websites and manage the websites for them. And they've had a tremendous success, because their products are very technical, difficult to understand. Their distributors and agents were sometimes struggling with explaining what this meant. And most of all, I think a lot of their prospective clients wanted to have extra evidence of commitment to the market, particularly in places like China and Brazil, but even Mexico. They wanted to say, are you really here for good? Are you really interested in our market? Or do you really know our market? And the websites helped demonstrate their credibility, helped support their brand and understanding, but also their credibility in the local market. And that's meant a tremendous boost to the distributors and to their export business. So I would also, if you have a moment, go on our website and look at some of the testimonials in videos that they take 2 minutes or whatever, and you'll find a company that you can relate to, I'm sure, because there's a lot of testimonials there. But you can hear Hugo, for example, from ASG, talking about the experience and why he chose to do these markets and these websites, if you want to learn more about them. The last company I wanted to highlight was this is a company that decided. Again, it's a U.S. company. It's from the Great Lakes area, but not from Wisconsin, sadly. But they really need to punch above their weight. They supply OEMs, and they need to say, yes, service is key. We're there for you all the time, and we can really, help you at all times. That sort of thing. And therefore, the web the website was designed to help their clients not so much find them or know them, but just sort of make sure that the clients always knew that they were there for them, that they would think of them first, that they would think of All World Machinery before others, and that they saw All World Machinery as a reliable, strong service company. So those are some of the examples I wanted to highlight of companies using websites in export markets to build global brands. But again, I would really recommend, if you wanted to learn more, just on our website, you'll find all the testimonials and you'll hear the clients and companies talking for themselves. In summary, for us, a localized website allows you to be found, to be understood, and to do business in your export markets. And that's really the key for us for helping Wisconsin companies. And please, as I said, check out the success stories if you get a moment. Moving on to online for Wisconsin. The state of Wisconsin has been very innovative and really very supportive to exporters, and has also said, right, they need to move into the 21st century. We need to help them get an online presence. We need to help them get online globally, and have asked us to help with that. And we've designed this online global program for Wisconsin companies. And it basically, you can find all the details either through Mark and his team or directly through us. But it basically boils down to an option of A or B. Samantha, do you want to go through those options? Samantha? Samantha, are you okay to go through the options? I'm not hearing Samantha, so I'm going to go through the options myself. Right. Okay. Option A is really two markets. You can basically get two markets. Website in two markets. Those can be anywhere in the world. They can be, for example, China and Mexico, or Germany and Mexico, whichever markets you want as an exporter. And we will build those websites for you. We're going to be fully localized, fully translated, fully optimized for the local search engine. It's going to be really a very functional and high caliber website for you. We deliver it within 3 months. And the list on the right-hand side is the long list of things that you get for those websites. So it's, secure hosting. It'll be fully regulatory compliant, even with the latest GDPR for all the European ones. The budget is $12,000 for this. You could apply for up to $10,000 with your IMAG, your International Market Access Grant, which covers that for the Wisconsin area. And then, of course, if you've graduated from an export tech, you do have access of up to $25,000. But just the IMAG covers up to $10,000 out of the $12,000. So really a very strong support from Wisconsin on that. Option B is really more sort of something that's tailored to you. If you say, well, in fact, I don't want two markets, and I don't want just those things. I want a full e-commerce market with a website with distributor secure areas, PayPal. I want it to have geolocation. I want a lot of bells and whistles on this thing. I want it to have satisfaction surveys, all kinds of different things on it. In that case, we will build you one to spec. And obviously the price then is dependent upon how many pages you want and what kind of apps you want on that. But basically it is, again, a very, very competitively priced, let's say. We're really doing this as low as possible for the Wisconsin area. And again, Wisconsin is saying IMAG will fund up to $10,000. For that, or if you're an export tech graduate, up to $25,000 for that. And again, that takes us between 3 to 4 months to complete. If it's a full e-commerce site, might take 4 months. So that's the main option A and option B for your online global program. Please, if you want to have questions, put them in your question box. We're happy to answer that. And then I wanted Mark, if he's available and free, just to say a quick word about the trade venture on Mexico. Mark, if you're
Great.
there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Mark.
Excellent. And buenos días y bienvenidos para todos. So hello and welcome to everybody. So once you've introduced yourself to your customers, help to make that connection both online and through whatever contacts you may have made, either through trade shows or email inquiries, or some of those chance meetings that you might have with the prospects. Your next step is to begin to develop that relationship. As I think many of you know, relationship is key, is king with regard to international business. I think in any business, but certainly in many of these countries like Mexico. So once you've made that initial connection, the next step is to go meet those folks. And many of you online this morning are in fact going with us to Mexico or have been with us on previous trade ventures. The trade venture essentially is three key services that are in-market representatives like Efren provide, which is market assessment, partner search, business meeting facilitation. We do that over normally a week. Sometimes it takes a bit longer in some other countries where there's a longer transit time. In this case, we're going to Mexico, 16th of February. We're landing. That's over the weekend. We do a cultural activity, have some conversation, meet each other. And then from Monday through Friday, you are having business meetings with your prospective end user customers, distributors, dealers, agents, reps, JV partners, if that's the direction, or even acquisitions that you may be considering in the market, depending on what your model is. These are customized business prospecting ventures and trips. We all then tend to gather toward the end of the day, normally in the lounge somewhere, to discuss with each other the results and next steps. And oftentimes, some of the folks on the trip meet someone who may not be the best prospect for them, but is a strong prospect for one of the other people traveling. So there's the program learning and the peer learning that comes from that participation. As you see in the slide there, it shows the number of or at least the agenda that we have for this trip. We fly into Monterrey, Mexico, and then back out of Mexico City. Registration for that actually closes on the 21st. We have quite a strong cohort of folks now. It's looking like up to 10 companies, which is a bit of a surprise for FNN because the last time I talked to him, it was 8. So Mexico is a popular destination in February for folks in Wisconsin, and there's still space for folks to sign up if you'd like to do that. And certainly those services that I mentioned are available at any point during the year. I think what's interesting about all of this conversation is that in the past, especially for B2B companies, that being online was a nice to have or a minor component of your sales and marketing effort in market, whereas now it is more of a need to have. And I think going forward, as we're learning today too, that not only do you need to have that presence, you need to have it as local and as frictionless as possible for the customers to be able to understand what it is that you can offer them and to begin to make that connection and continue that connection and that relationship. Susanna, is there another slide after this one, or is there?
No, I think we're
Okay.
we're kind of running out of time. I think we're
Yeah.
going to go straight into some questions.
Excellent. So
There are actually some questions. I understand. I know Efren's got a hard stop. I was wondering if Efren has a quick moment, just because I've got 2 questions in about NAFTA. Do they have any more about NAFTA? Any more details on NAFTA? Efren? Oh. He might have already had to
if he's not online, so we had a recent presentation on that, and it's, as Efren mentioned, it's pending confirmation in the assemblies, legislatures of each of the countries. I guess the main point about it is that even if it, let's say, doesn't go through, gets hung up because of new Congress in the U.S., other issues in each one of the countries, that the original NAFTA still stays in place. So that concern about the major disruption is not going to happen. So it continues on, although I think the preference is that it moves forward, that the agreement moves forward, that there has been some points in that modernize it, partly for e-commerce, and then some of those requirements on the automotive industry are probably the main points. And as more information becomes available and time goes on, from the Wisconsin side here, we'll be pulling together a working group and some more presentations that will go through some of the international trade associations, the one in Madison and Milwaukee principally, and we'll keep everybody informed on that. All of you, certainly who are online, we have your emails, and we'll continue to send out information about any presentations and what's available to keep us all up to date on that.
Terrific. Thank you, Mark. A quick question, and maybe this one's for Samantha. If you can join us back, Samantha, which is just, I have a question here from one of the exporters. It's a B2B company, and they're saying, okay, are there specific markets that it's best to start with an online presence? In other words, are there markets that are better than others? Where should I start for an online presence? Samantha?
That's a great question. Can everyone hear me now?
Yes, I think so, yes.
Excellent. Okay, so there are different ways you can go about it. It definitely varies from company to company. If you are already doing business in a certain market and you want to have a greater presence there, maybe you want, maybe you just want to have direct communication with your customers, then we always suggest going that route. Another way that people go about doing it is if they want to enter a market, but they don't want to fully dedicate themselves there. For example, they don't want to have to hire someone in that specific market. They can just have a localized website first and see if there's traction. And then there's the other route where there's just the major markets of the world that are always just good go-to markets. And that's the other route that we've seen companies take. So it definitely varies from company to company, but we're always willing to kind of talk you through it.
Thank you, Samantha. Just very quickly, I think this might have to be one of our last questions, which is another question about distributors. And this one saying, we have a distributor in Mexico and he has our website. What should he keep our website is the question. In our view, your domain name is really important and it belongs to you. You should consider it like an asset. So your domain name is your name. So for example, wedc.org, wisconsinexporter.org.com or .mx, that's an important asset for you to have. And really handing that over to a distributor is in our view, not a good idea. It's a great idea to use a website to help the distributors and to drive traffic to distributors. But allowing the distributor to own your brand essentially online is not a good idea, because in the long term, your agendas might not always be the same. Your resources might not always be the same either. So we have found that a better solution is really for you to own your domain name, and we can help you buy that in any market without problems. We can always help and buy that for you. And just these are not expensive. A domain name costs about $20. So check which ones are your most important markets for export, and I would suggest buying them. And if you have problems with them, let us know. We'll help you and buy them for you and then pass them on to you. This is basically your online brand. And I don't see why you should be handing that to anybody, especially not someone who's not within the company, but an external distributor. Even if you have a very strong, good relationship with that distributor over time, their expertise might not always be in online marketing either. So really, you're relying on someone who is not always of your company to own your online presence. So we would really strongly recommend that you own your domain names in your key export markets. I hope that sort of got over the question. I'm conscious of time. I wanted to thank Efren, Mark for organizing it, Samantha for joining me, and all of the Wisconsin companies who attended today. Thank you all so much for this. This is fantastic. We do look forward to hearing more about the trade venture, and I'm sure that is going to be a real terrific success. I would finally ask that you stay online just a few seconds longer to fill out that poll. But otherwise, it's just really left to us to wish you a terrific end of the year. All best wishes for a tremendous exporting year of 2019 as well. Season's greetings, and thank you for being with us. Happy exporting to all of you. Thank you very much. And thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, Susanna.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.